Welcome to The Freight Break with your host, Dan Lindsey, the podcast that cuts through the noise of the trucking industry. We're talking real conversations, real relationships, and real insight that keep the wheels turning.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Freight Break, your go-to podcast for valuable and practical content that helps you grow your freight business. I am your host, Dan Lindsey. We've got a fantastic show for you today, but first off, I want to pitch the Broker Carrier Summit and the BCS Freight Network for you. If you are not a member of the BCS Freight Network, you are missing out on the most dynamic, most trusted network in freight. So head on over to bcsfreightnetwork.com and sign up today. Also, a quick reminder, if you have not yet signed up for the next Broker Carrier Summit, we are going to be in Orlando, October 28th to the 30th. This is an event you will not want to miss. It is quickly becoming the best, most profitable, most valuable week in freight. So if you have not signed up yet, go to our website, www.brokercarriersummit.com or bcsfreightnetwork.com and sign up today.
TIE TMS, workflows, automation, and integrations built for real freight broker needs. Whether you handle LTL or FTL, TIE delivers data-driven quoting and decision-making so you can win more opportunities and grow faster. Automate tedious tasks, manage carriers, and integrate your tools. No more jumping between apps. Empower your team with the right TMS to boost productivity and win more loads every day. Ready to see TIE in action? Visit tiesoftware.com to schedule your live demo.
Hello, welcome back, everyone, to this segment of Breaking It Down. Today, we are going to break down life and logistics with my good friend, Jeff Dickinson. As close to a BCS OG as there can be. Jeff's been with us since our Tampa Summit. Look forward to talking about what he's got going on. So without further ado, I even wore my special Paisley shirt in honor of the Bodacious Cowboy today. So Jeff Dickinson, good afternoon. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me on your show. I always wanted to be on the Freight Break, and here I am.
And now you are. And now you have time. Because that was a challenge at the beginning of the year. Like you called me, I think it was in February, and said, hey, Dan, my year's going great, but it's going too great. I have a lot going on. So give us an update on the Bodacious Cowboy. What has been going on in your world?
Yeah, just so much. I love to dabble in many different things, Dan, take on challenges. It's not just my business, but now I started up the Freight Fraud Task Force, which I co-founded with Dale Prax. He's an advisor to our committee, but we've got 5 great people who are actually the co-founders of it. And then we have directors who oversee committees and subcommittees. I mean, all in all, Dan, we have over 400 years of experience running this Freight Fraud Task Force and looking at all entities of fraud. So I'm very busy on that, creating content and posts, getting the website up, going after sponsors. I mean, you know how it is. It's not that easy. My business is growing left and right. I don't know how, but I mean, it is, and I'm taking it for what it's worth. And I got a new website out there as well. I built that in the beginning of the year. That took many months. So that's up and running. I got the accurateshipper.info on the website as well. We'll go into that a little bit later. That's my checklist that I told you about. And I've been just so busy. We talked a couple times, and I was going to try to get down to Philadelphia, and that was right after the BCS, and time wasn't there. And I hope
that was a Dan dropped the ball on that. Lesson learned. I will never schedule anything within 2 weeks of a BCS ever again, on the front end or the back end, because it's just absolutely insane.
Right.
So
right.
I do hope that I think we're going to make up the Philly one later on in the year. We're trying to figure out when we're going to do that.
Yeah. Let me know. I can help, man.
So, but let's talk about this, because you and I, we know each other for a while, but I did not know this. I know that you are a very intentional, very thorough professional when it comes to logistics and transportation. But talk to us about, you mentioned it briefly just now. You have what was a 176 question checklist that you send shippers through.
Yes.
Right.
And you know what? Thanks for bringing that up too, because it's not just for shippers. It could be for brokers. It'd be for carriers as well, because a lot of things, when you get a new shipper on board or a new carrier, things get mixed up in the translation when a new relationship starts. So what I wanted to do, and especially when I worked on the shipper side, I created this checklist, but it grew over time, as I adapted to different types of verticals and all of that and the types of questions you should ask. The shipper fills that out, and that information gets turned over either directly to a broker or to a carrier, or a broker and carrier, as to how the operations work at a shipper, what they can expect, who are the contacts, how is it loaded, what do they need, what are the shipping hours, the receiving hours, you name it, I have it. I mean, it's for every single mode as well. It gives you the contacts as well, and their phone numbers, their emails, so that there's no miscommunication. That happens a lot, right, Dan? I mean, especially when you're talking, to a new carrier or a shipper, they try to pull the wool over your eyes, and it happens. Well, now it's concrete. You have it in writing from them, So when it comes to detention or any other thing that you can think of, well, you told me it was going to be this, but it's now that. I got it in writing, So it kind of softens the relationship as far as what you can expect and what you won't expect, because it's all laid out there in the beginning of the relationship, which is very important.
Very important one. I think, too, it speaks to a level of intentionality that I think I see the industry moving toward. You're not really leaving a lot of things open for ambiguity, not leaving a lot of things open for chance. You're really trying to be intentional about who you partner with, whether it's a shipper on the customer side or a carrier on the other customer side or the vendor side, however you look at carriers. I would imagine that people can benefit from creating a similar type of questionnaire for their factoring companies, for their TMS providers, for their employees. As a manager, I would want to know from my team, when I say X, what do you hear when I say X? So I think I like the intentionality. I wish more people took that level of an approach to it.
Yeah, and when you think about when you're building something new, whether it's a TMS, CRM, whatever it might be, proprietary tool, you sit down with people and you discuss these kind of things, and you take those ideas and you translate that on paper, and then you start discussing that and you build upon that. It's called process improvement plan, right? Of how can you take something that already exists and make it better than what it was. And the only way you get to do that is bringing in these people that you trust. It could be like even on a round table. I used to do that too when I was on the shipper side. We didn't talk about rates or anything like that. We talked about best practices, and I brought in all my carriers. We sat around a table and we just discussed, hey, what's working, what's not working with the shipper? How can we help this shipper be better than who he or she is? That's going to benefit all, because that's what it's all about. It's not what's good for me. Yeah, I'm making money and I'm making profits, but what about them? Are they making money and profits as well? How can we shrink that stuff down to increase revenue, to decrease detention, get these guys back on the road, keep them moving, so forth and so on. So it's very important to do that. And I definitely say to everybody out there listening to this program, do that. Have one of those round tables, create that document.
Well, because it speaks to, again, businesses are about relationships. I think somewhere along the line, I don't know exactly when this happened, but businesses became all about money. And money is important in business. You have to turn a profit to continue doing business. I'm not knocking profitable business. I mean, I hope to run a profitable business myself. But when you drill it down to the bare bones, the essentials, the skeletons, or the pillars of what makes a good business, it comes down to relationships, and relationships rely on transparency. They rely on trust and communication, but they also rely on give and take. And that's something I think you and I have talked about this a lot. And you alluded to it just now about sometimes you have to give a little bit for your partners to win, which means they'll do more business with you, and then you will also win. And then that continues to feed itself. What are some of the ways in which you've been able to establish good, quality, long-term relationships over the last however long. How long have you been in the industry?
Over 40 years.
Yeah.
And I'm still breathing. I got hair on my head and, not too much hair on
You
my
have
face.
you have more hair above your lip than I have on my entire face, my friend, my entire head. Jeff's the only guy in freight that's been around for 40 years that has actually had more hair than he has when he started in freight.
That's true. But yeah, the thing is that it can't be profits over service. It has to be service over profits. And to build those long-term business relationships, and you probably heard this, the customer is always right? You've heard that many different times. I believe that it's wrong. And here's the reason why, right? I believe that a good relationship, when you're paid, that you're paid to tell them when they're wrong. Be authentic. Don't try to pull the wool over their eyes and BS them to death. Tell them the way that it is, and then be able to back it up. Just don't tell them why they're wrong, but tell them why they're wrong with facts, what's happening, that they may not see it. I mean, if you're talking to a CEO or CFO or a president, they're not in the trenches all the time. And they may say stuff that may not relate to a certain thing that they think is going on, but it's not going on. So it's up to you. They're paying you good money to tell them when they're wrong so they can improve on their operations. A lot of people don't do that. They're afraid to say that, or admit when you're wrong. A lot of people are afraid to say, hey, you know what, Dan, I'm really sorry, man. I screwed up. This is what really went down. And, I need to tell you this, even though you don't want to hear it, I'm going to tell you. That's the way how you build those relationships, because it's authenticity. It's what they want to hear, even though they don't want to hear it, because they're not going to hear it from anybody else, because a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, it can be intimidating. I remember a situation I was in when I was, in the trenches of slinging freight. I lost out on a good number of lanes with a bid that I was working on. And it was with a customer that I worked with at that point for like 4 or 5 years. We knew each other extremely well, but they were going super cost conscious and they wanted to go at the lowest bidder. And I called the VP of operations and I said, listen, you're making a mistake. Not because you're not going with me, but because you're going with the cheapest, lowest ball carrier. That will not turn out well for you. But I will tell you this, when it doesn't go well for you, I will be right here to pick up the pieces, even though they're not mine to pick up, and I'm not going to charge you anymore. And he called me arrogant and all kinds of stuff. He's like, what do you know? Literally the first load that they ran with this carrier, I still to this day don't know how this happened. The trailer literally fell in half while over the road. Like, not down the center, like in the middle of the trailer. Like, the tandems just gave out. I don't know what happened, but it broke in half, and there's like pieces of machinery all over the road. And I get the phone call, and he said, and the first words out of his mouth, he said, Dan, I'm sorry, you're right. And he told me the entire story. We actually repowered the whole thing, and actually helped the driver get his truck off the road as well. But that can be intimidating, though, because especially for these younger people who are just in the industry 1 to 5 years, they don't know nearly what they should know to be able to have the confidence to speak to a senior level executive, with 100% authenticity and honesty. How would you guide someone who is new or newer into the industry into having those conversations?
Yeah, first thing you can read behind me, I have this saying up there that I live by: cheapest is the most expensive way to conduct business. Being that if you're going to save $700 on the load, it only takes one F up to happen that could bankrupt your company. Literally, that's where you get into nuclear verdicts and thermonuclear verdicts and stuff. It'll be the most expensive $700 save that you ever had in your whole entire life, because they don't vet or do anything like that. But for new kids that are coming in, I strongly recommend that just don't pray and spray and reach out to customers. Do your homework on them. Do some research on them. If you want to call up Dan, find out who Dan is. Find out his background. Find out about his company. What do they do? Where are their facilities? What do they ship? Does it fall in your vertical? If you don't have a vertical or mode that because you're new, find out what you like first. Talk to your floor manager, get involved, talk at the end of the day or beginning of the day. Learn from a fellow broker that's been in that seat for a long time, that knows the ins and outs, and then create your own approach. Be you. Don't try to duplicate somebody else because that's not authentic. Be you, create your own pitch. Don't try to sell out of the gate because you're going to fail. Don't talk about pricing. Get to know that person, who you're talking with. It's the best advice that I got a long, long, long time ago. And that's why I do it now.
Yeah. Well, and we're gonna pivot in a minute to the Freight Fraud Task Force, what you guys are doing there. But I think this conversation really has repercussions when it comes to how we envision things like fraudulent activity in the industry. One of the things, and you've said this multiple times, you've not had a double brokering incident on any of your loads from your customers in years. And one of the reasons for that is because everyone who is moving your freight or your customer's freight. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. I'm one of very few that have never faced any theft, fraud, or double brokering in 45 years. Nobody can say that kind of stuff. Because back then,
it's because he has a 176 question checklist.
No, I didn't have that at that time, but I learned, from the street up in the trenches. And one of the best things was a handshake. Back then, when we conducted business, a handshake was ironclad. We went out to lunch with carriers. Yeah, we had liquid lunches back then, but we opened up and we got to know each other. And then let's just say the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, right? Who goes up there? God awful places and stuff like that. Hey, I know a guy, that's all he does is that. Oh yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, you should give him a call. Tell him that, XYZ told you to reach out. That's the way we did business because we didn't have the cells. We had landlines. We didn't have the computers. We had the newspapers. I mean, we're talking hard stuff that we had to do in order to gain knowledge, in order to do things right and make those calls and get in our cars and drive to these places and introduce ourselves. But that's what's missing today. It's missing because, like you said earlier, it's all money driven now. The service is put behind. It should be. I asked. What's really interesting, Dan? I asked a question on a poll. For your business, what's most important as an operator? Not one answered safety first. Not one. It wasn't even the top three. Safety has to be the first thing on everybody's agenda. Second, service, and then profit, maybe a little way down there, because you're not going to make the profit if you don't have safety up there. And if you're not servicing your customer, you might as well just kiss them goodbye. You have to be on top of them day in and day out and vet their carriers. Don't be afraid. Even though they're not giving you that lane, you can always say, hey, listen, you know what? I'll help you out. I've got the Freight Fraud Task Force. I've got some really good vetting tools. Let me vet your carriers. I want to make sure you're in a good position to win. You can just do so many different things when you know what to do. A lot of the new people there don't because they don't think of that. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, and relationships take time, and unfortunately, learning the how to navigate the safety and compliance landscape and architecture that the government has put into place, it takes a long freaking time too. It's a nightmare trying to navigate that. And I know why more than a quarter of the trucks that are on the road are essentially should be out of service, but they're not, because it's hard to figure out how to navigate those requirements. So talk to us about, in knowing that, why and how the Freight Fraud Task Force came about, because there's a lot of technologies out there, as we mentioned, in fighting fraud. But I think one of the things that I've said this over and over again, I think a lot of what we've done in the last 5 years is we've relegated to technology what should remain in the realm of relationships. So talk to us about how and why the Freight Fraud Task Force was born and what the goals are for it and what you guys are working on now.
Sure. And let me ask you this question. Freight fraud's been escalating over the last 5 years, even a little bit longer than that. With all the tools that are out there, you would think that it would de-escalate instead of escalate, right? There's so many tools out there. Everybody's doing the right things, Dan. They're meaningful. They want to do the right things, but there's too much overlap. There's a lot of overlap, and there's things that are falling through the cracks. One of them, and I read every day on LinkedIn. I'm sure you probably are on there reading a lot of posts and content. And unfortunately, a lot of these vetting companies, even though they mean well, they're creating loopholes for the bad guys to circumvent. And they're also drawing roadmaps, telling them how they're doing it, how they were able to expose them and all this. Wrong thing. It's like the element of surprise. Don't tell them how you're going to do it. But when they feel the pain after we found out who it was and they get the knock on the door or their doors get shut, well, that's painful. I mean, it's just so many things. That's what we do differently in the Freight Fraud Task Force. I've got a ton of people, like I said, under me and with me. And like I said, Dale Prax is an advisor. We talk a lot. Yeah, we're looking at different things in all different areas of freight fraud, and we have directors in that area. They're volunteers, I mind you, but they have committees and subcommittees under there. And we have well over 400 years of experience, even in cybersecurity as well. A lot of people don't talk about this that much, but basically the Freight Fraud Task Force is built on audits, education, and best practices. We'll write them, we'll educate people, we'll do the audits to tell them where they're faulting, where their loopholes is, and then we'll use case studies and we'll do all different kinds of stuff to show them how they can stop it. We want to stop it. We want to change legislation. There's things with FMCSA 49 CFR 392.7 pre-check inspections. You talked a little bit about that in the OOS. That's part of fraud. When these drivers out there are not doing their pre-check inspections, even though it's a mandatory requirement by FMCSA that they're supposed to do it before every haul at every single shipper that they move. They don't do it. You could go in there. I could knock on a few doors of warehouses, walk up to carriers and say, hey, did you do your pre-check inspection? Most of them will say no. Some of them will even say, hey, guess what? We don't get paid to do that. I go, are you serious? I mean, it's like, that's why 21.6% of all the carriers out there, the 5 million of them every single day, over 1 million of them are OOS or unroadworthy. So that means that 1 in 5 that you pass on the highway could take you out or your family. That's unbelievable. That's horrendous.
Yeah, think of how many semis you pass just on your way to work in the morning, for God's sake. I mean, that's a terrifying statistic. I remember when Matt Leffler first dropped that. I can't remember whether it was in Fort Worth or Kansas City. I think it was Fort Worth. The room just, like, you could hear the gas, because I think people knew that it's a problem, but I don't think they knew how big of a problem it was.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, my friend?
Well, I got, we're at half year right now. I'm working on a lot of different things. I also just got elected as the Deputy Grand Knight of the Knights of Columbus. So now I'm taking over that council, with the Grand Knight, and we're working on different things. I got this logistics project that I'm working on called the Kept Promise, KEPT. It's called the Knights Emergency Preparedness Team, where I'll be able to hit any place in the United States within a moment's notice to get supplies down into a specific area that got hit by a disaster, working with other councils in other states. So, I'm trying to do good things outside of what I'm doing for my own business. And sharing some knowledge, so I'm going to do that for the rest of the year, probably the rest of my career. I have no intentions of retiring, because to me, this isn't a job. Done it for 45 years, maybe another 15 years. I don't know, but I enjoy waking up and going on safari and going on that hunt and seeing what comes up, because I love dabbling in challenges. So bring them on.
Well, I look forward to seeing you sometime very soon. I know. I hope you're going to be able to get to Orlando, because I'm hoping to slip you into a speaking slot again this year.
Yes, I am. I'm going to try, my friend. I'm gonna be one of those last ones that say, I'm on a plane, Dan. I'm on the way down.
You're going to be one of the 45% that signs up in the last 3 weeks. I know you are.
But everybody out there, man, go to the BCS, man. It's great. I went to 3 out of 5 of them. I would have been there in Indy the last time, but things just got a little out of hand. I had to take care of business first, but this is, the BCS is the place to go if you want to gain a lot of knowledge. There's no BS there at all, no booths, nothing. I'm not trying to plug your business, but I've been there, I've seen it, and it's one of the best events that any logistician in the country, or even Mexico or Canada, can go to. And you will be in Mexico soon. So
we will be in Mexico very soon, next February. February's going to be here before we know it, and it's a little terrifying to know that time is moving faster and faster every year. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Always good to talk with you, and we will talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, that wraps up our show for today, everyone. Thank you very much again for joining us. And again, if you have not signed up yet for the Broker Carrier Summit, visit us at www.brokercarriersummit.com/events to sign up today. So until next time, everyone, take care.